Hey everybody, my name is Peyton Mensmeyer and I'm one of the ministers here at the Vero Beach Church of Christ. And what wild times we live in. And it's important to remember during these times that people are not our enemies. The disease is our enemy. And there's people all over the world now who are trying to combat and taking precautions to defeat that enemy. But in the meantime, we as Christians, we have this pretty clear opportunity to love. Like, what if we began viewing this world's shutdown not as a time of fear, but rather as a time where we as Christians can show the world our radical love that has first been shown to us? Like, what if instead of using this time to look inwardly with hoarding supplies or binging our favorite TV shows on Netflix, or even going on social media to rant and be involved in the politics and whatnot. What if instead we instead of using this time to look inwardly, we instead used it to love outwardly? Like, we use this time to share resources with other people. Like, instead of binging TV shows on Netflix, we spend intentional time with our family members. Like, instead of going and ranting on social media, we use this time to fast from the noise. So I want to read a passage of scripture, and it's a story that Jesus tells in trying to define what love looks like, what radical love looks like, and trying to answer the question of who is my neighbor? Like, who am I supposed to be loving? So it's a story many of us have heard, but I want to just read it and just use this time just to listen. Listen to the story and maybe try to hear it with fresh ears. So Luke chapter 10, and I'm going to start the story in verse 30, right into it. Then Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him, they went away, leaving him half dead. And a priest happened to be going down the same road, and he saw the man, he passed on the other side. And so too a Levite, when he came to the place, he saw him, and he passed on the other side. But then a Samaritan came, and as he traveled, he came to where the man was. He saw him, and he took pity on him. He went to him, he bandaged his wounds, he poured on oil and wine, and then he put the man on his own donkey, and he brought him to an inn and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, he gave it to the innkeeper, and he said, 'Look after him, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have.' And then which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hand of the robbers?" So Jesus is defining for us, just in this short story, who is my neighbor and what does radical love look like? And so to answer that question, it's a 2-part of what I see in the story. One is that we have to choose likeness over differences. Did you notice the 2 people who decided to go around this man? It was a Levite and it was a priest. 2 people in Jesus's day who had a lot of power, who had a lot of significance, who were kind of lifted up in society. Those are the people that went around. Notice what Jesus is establishing just at the very beginning of the story, right? It's not about having the right label. Like, it's not about right labels. It's about having the right heart. Like, you may claim to be a follower of Jesus. Everybody might know that you are a Christian, right? You could go to every worship service and be involved in every activity. But if your heart, according to Jesus, if your heart is not in the right place, then either you have a skewed understanding of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, or it's just not true. Like, let's do a little exercise. I want you to imagine somebody in your life who is utterly different than you. I mean, utterly different. Maybe they practice a different religion. They worship different gods. Maybe they're from a different ethnic group. They're a different ethnicity than you. They have a different skin colors. They sound different than you. Maybe they have a completely different worldview. They have a different kind of lifestyle, one that you might even consider to be repulsive in some ways. But they live that different lifestyle. They're completely and utterly different. And I don't want you just to imagine somebody random. I want you to imagine somebody in your life that is utterly different. I want you to imagine your neighbors and your coworkers and your friends, because the likelihood is that you know people in your life who fit into that different than you category. So according to Jesus, the thing that qualifies people worthy of your love is that they, like you, are made in the likeness of God. That they are human. They are made in the likeness of God. It's likeness over differences. We have to stop subtracting people's value based off of all the ways that they are different from us. You see what I'm saying? Like, we do this. Like, they're a different skin color, we subtract value. They go to a different church, or they believe something different about God, subtract their value. They have a different worldview. They're not associated with my family. They're in a different stage of life, subtract value. But Jesus says to be a good neighbor, to be filled with the same spirit of love that is in Jesus, then you have to see others as God's own image, the way God sees them. So likeness over differences. And then the second one, we have to choose others over self. So the person who decided to stop on the road and he saw a Jewish man, the person who decided to stop and help was a Samaritan man. Now, words can't even begin to capture the hostility that existed between these two people groups during this time. But this man, he sees the Samaritan man, he sees this Jewish man, and he decides to choose likeness over differences, and he loves him. And the love expressed, that love is expressed in this way. It is choosing to take somebody else's problems and to make them your own. Like the Good Samaritan, he takes this man, he binds his wound, he pours oil, he cleanses him, he puts him on his own donkey, he takes him to an inn, he pays for everything this man might need, for months' wages, and then what does he do? Then he leaves without any recognition of what he did for this man. This man might never have known who helped him and saved his life on that road. It was a love that was choosing others over self. Your greatest opportunity to love God is to learn to love others who are made in God's image. The greatest opportunity that you have to love God with all of your heart, mind, soul, strength is to learn to love other people with that same kind of vigor. And the sad thing is before everything happening in the world right now, we didn't think that we could afford to love people that way. It's true. We couldn't afford the time. We couldn't afford the resources. We lived in a fast-paced world where everything was moving hyperspeed. We were focused on our job and our family and our life and our success and our bank account. It was an inward-focused world. But now the world has stopped. It stopped. And I encourage you, don't waste these moments binging Netflix or scrolling through social media. Instead, take up the opportunity to serve others over yourself. This Good Samaritan, he wasn't haunted by the question of what are people going to think of me? What would happen to me if I help this man? He wasn't haunted by that question. But rather, what would happen to him if I don't help? So this is a pretty high expectation of love. And it's a costly experience to choose likeness over differences, to choose others over self. I know, it's hard. And if you're like me, you're asking yourself the same question. Like, how am I supposed to do this? Like, what am I supposed to do? How do I love that way? When do I do it? And the answer is today. Because today, You are surrounded by many people who are scared and anxious and desperate and in need. Today, you have neighbors. You have coworkers. You have friends who could just use a phone call from you asking if they need anything. Today, you have an opportunity to make a positive impact on the world and to show the world the radical love of Jesus that was first shown to you. In the midst of the darkness of our world, today, you have the opportunity to be the light. Be the light. God bless you guys. Stay clean, stay safe. We'll see you later.